Welcome to Goodwin Boxing Ring Talk Season 2, Episode 5.
I've
already lost count. Jesus. With me, Martin Theobald, and with Steve Goodwin. How are you, Steve?
All good, mate. Had better days, but there we go.
The stresses of trying to bring boxing back at a small hall level.
Without what I consider to be proper help from other parties involved in that.
Yeah, we're going to do an episode at some point about this because if Steve seems like his enthusiasm might have been kicked around a little bit, it probably has. But by the by, what's going on with Goodwin Boxing? I see on BoxRec that Jamani Camiro has an opponent announced.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously Conor Vian had to fly off to Afghanistan. Thank God he's back home safe and sound.
Good.
But obviously he wasn't able to train, so he wouldn't have been ready. So we've got a replacement in, which is still another cracking fight, in Billy Allington. And the winner will fight Conor Vian in November. So Conor's not going to lose out, which is very important considering what he had to go and do. So we've made the agreement with both Jamani and Billy Allington's representatives that whoever wins will defend against Conor Vian in November. Which is
excellent. So it's still for the title as well.
Yeah. But Conor gets a guaranteed shot. They waive their voluntary and Conor gets a shot. And I think that's the right thing to do all round.
Brilliant. Any other news on shows?
Well, we're plot at the moment. We are carrying on regardless, but I feel very sorry for all the boxers that want to box at the moment in London on shows. It's very difficult. York Hall now has got 2 professional promoters promoting only, Mo Pryor with their collaboration and ourselves. I spoke to Mickey Elliott last week. He has no interest in promoting at all under the current regime and rules, which he's an intelligent man. He's doing the right thing. And for us, it's very difficult. And I feel sorry for boxers. I mean, I'm getting texts from managers asking to put their fighters on our shows, and I'm saying no, because we're trying to look after our own ones to the best we can. Very difficult, very, very difficult. If this doesn't change, there's going to be a humongous fallout of boxing in London, without a shadow of a doubt.
And so what people may not realise, the restrictions in place are that you can only have 7 fights on a card at York Hall at present.
That's the current restrictions, yeah. And despite the fact that they had a site visit 5 weeks ago and they've had 2 shows, which they had, Mo Pride had 2 shows booked, and they were like the guinea pig trials, we're still in the same boat. And there are 3 scheduled shows in September, 2 of ours, 1 of Mo Pryor's. And at this moment in time, everybody's working on this 7 still, despite the fact everybody had expected it to have been moved back to the 10 or somewhere on that road. So there will be fighters that are scheduled to fight who won't fight. There will be, in reality, honest to God, we should cancel the shows now. We should be cancelling them now. It makes no sense for us financially to stage them. Both shows in September should be cancelled and moved to November, or do whatever you do with them. They shouldn't be run. It makes no sense. We're trying not to do that, but there's fighters that are not going to fight. And you've got the other problem is some of the fights that you wanted to, that you can't get matched because there's not enough opponents. You need to go abroad. But you can't go abroad for the extra ones that you're not matching, because in case they don't increase the numbers. So yeah, it's very, very difficult. And then you've got October coming and you're still trying to run a show there without knowing the numbers. You can say, well, it's 7, but if 7 is the definitive number, that's the end of York Hall boxing, unless you just got money you want to throw down the toilet. It's the end.
Yeah, which I know we were discussing it previously around the fact that it's the ambiguity that doesn't help in certain ways, that you're being told it might be 7, it might be more. How do you plan a show? People may not realise the financials of how a boxing show runs, but you need to sell an awful lot of tickets to cover everything that comes with a boxing show, from the doctors, the venue hire, the board officials, the opponents, the fighters,
security, staff.
security. Yeah, that's not even all of it. That's not even all of it. The insurances, all these things, and only having 7 fights at York Hall is very difficult then to be able to cover all of those costs.
Impossible is the word. Impossible. So if you are like myself, you're committed to fighters and you're committed to boxing, you may take a view and say, I'm going to stage shows and lose money on a temporary basis just to try and get through this period. But we don't know, and we still haven't been told it's a temporary basis. So the way we've got to assume it, I've got to make a decision based on the fact it's only 7 fights, because it isn't being increased. And we'd hope by now there may have been some sort of decision to say, well, in October we're going to increase it, but it's not. We're still in the same boat. And you know, it's very difficult. I understand everybody in boxing has a different role to perform, but if you say to me now it's 7 fights at York Hall permanently, we say bye-bye.
Yeah, which is horrific, isn't it? It's
bye-bye boxing. It's bye-bye boxing. And it has to be bye-bye boxing because it's no longer viable. And you also lose the, you know, there are other venues, as I've said before, that are being sanctioned for 10 fights that have got smaller spaces than York Hall, which we will discuss another time. But from my point of view, I don't mind doing boxing and not making money. I like boxing, but I cannot afford to throw lots of money away every time we do a show. It's not possible. And, you know, I've got lots of other things in my world that I have to do in my financial world. And I can't give up time to try and sort out the financial mess of running a show that's losing substantial sums of money. And the other thing, if you have 7 fights, that means you can only schedule 7. Those 7 will never all stay. You'll end up with 4 or 5. You just aren't going to bother. It's done. It's a done job. It's not viable to run. Now, it is viable to run if you just want to lose money. So people that just don't care about and will lose money, and they might do it in the short term, in the medium term. But you can't, you know, I don't want breaking even, but you can't be losing £5,000, £6,000, £7,000 a show. You can't. And I feel sorry for everybody involved at the moment that we can't definitively, you know, the point is if it, and I genuinely say this, if it is 7 fights at York Hall ongoing, we will have no choice.
What strikes me the most out of it all is that the reason behind, and this is my view, this isn't the view of Goodwin Boxing, it's the view of Martin Theobald, before anyone gets in trouble. The restrictions are in place because of COVID restrictions and around having the changing rooms, the space, etc., etc. Name me any other sport that are working within restrictions around that same scenario. So, for instance, football, you could have, you know, I'm going to think of Burnley, for instance, at Turf Moor. I've never been to the changing rooms, but I'm guessing they're not like Tottenham's, where it's, you know, an expanse of land where you've got changing rooms. You're going to have quite tight changing rooms. Fulham, Craven Cottage. These teams have like, what, a squad plus their physios, their coaches, their all these different things. You're going to have 30, 40 people within a changing room. That's no different to York Hall. If you started working out space per square meter per person, it's not going to be any different. Why is it?
They also got to be COVID tested, right? Before. Now, the day before, whereas I think it's stupid, you should be doing the COVID testing on the day in a separate venue if that's what you want, and then transport them to the venue. That way they can't get COVID in between. But if you test them the day before, which is apparently the current rules, they go home, go to the nightclubs, go in hotels, go out for drinks, meals in the evening, they can go and catch COVID in the evening. None of it makes any sense to me. And if you have got them, you know, if you do have them COVID tested and then shipped in a vehicle to the venue and they're in the venue, what does it matter? They've all been proven to be COVID negative. I don't get it. None of it makes any sense to me. None of it makes any sense.
If the restriction were prove that you've got a negative test on the day or you're double vaccinated, cool. I'm okay with that. That makes sense to me. if the restriction is you can only have certain numbers of people per changing room, and those tests are done the day before, that makes no sense. It makes no sense whatsoever, and it seems like you're working in a very backwards way.
I don't understand it, right? So, but all I know is I'm not there to make the rules. I'm there to deal with the rules that are created. But the point is, the rules, if they are left as they are, make it impossible to stage boxing at York Hall. Doesn't make it impossible to stage boxing at other venues, because they've got 10 fights and you can get away. They're cheaper venues. York Hall is an expensive venue. You know, 10 fights, it's still questionable, really questionable. 7 fights is lunacy. It's very, very, very difficult. But you only dealt with what you're being given to by whoever's in charge, and it's just totally and utterly unworkable. Totally unworkable for the long term, for the short term, for the boxers. And you know, I've got an asset on the second show on the 18th. We're going to have to cut some fights back, and I've got a trainer with 2 fighters on there who just says, "Well, okay, my fighters need to fight." I'm not going to be sitting there next week arguing with different trainers about who's fighting and who's not. I can't do that. I haven't got the inclination, will, because the simple thing is, all fighters that are on there shouldn't be fighting. The whole show needs to be pulled, really, which we didn't want to do, right? But I'm just being honest. Other people might not be saying it, but it's as it is. Those shows should not be happening from our point of view. They should be cancelled. So if anybody gets to fight on them, they should be grateful. Not the ones that aren't going to get to fight. It's just the ones that aren't going to get to fight, they have to fight in November, whenever they're going to fight next. But from our point of view, to let somebody fight is madness. Any of them fight, it's madness for us. Madness. And yeah, it's just what it is.
And that's the framework you're working with him.
Because we haven't got an end to this 7-fight thing. Because at the moment, you're being told it's being reviewed, but it's just permanently being reviewed. So you're still left with 7. So if there is, this can permanently be reviewed for the next 6 months, 12 months, can't it? At 7.
Yeah.
It's not doable. Not doable.
Yeah. So there's good boxing news for the week, is that there needs to be a change, or else there needs to be a shift.
If there's no shift, there will be a lot of small hall boxers in London that will be able to fight in other venues, but they won't be fighting in York Hall.
Yeah.
Because there'll be very few promoters prepared to lose the money they're going to need to lose at York Hall sustainably. I think everybody will suffer losses in the short term. Well, not everybody, but some people will, for the greater good. You know what I mean? You'd lose money for the greater good. But if there is no greater good at the end, there's pointless losing money in the first place.
Yeah, so there was actually a question, we'll jump onto it, from Better Q on Twitter. Is Mo Pryor cancelling shows an unfortunate reality of the post-lockdown era?
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah. I mean, he went early, and he was the guinea pig, which we didn't. We waited till September because we hoped by then there'd be some set procedures, which hasn't happened, right? So it's unfortunate, but expect to see lots of shows cancelled and boxers training for nothing under the current rules. Yeah, expect to see, I said, I genuinely believe this, expect to see real big problems down the track with small boxing in the London area that are being, in my opinion, for no logical reason.
Yeah. I've got plenty of thoughts on it, none of which I will say now. But yeah, it feels wrong. But there we go. Yeah. I will save you any grief from anyone for me saying it. Let's do some questions. Did you watch any of the boxing at the weekend? Because I didn't. I was away.
I saw I did see some of the fights and highlights of some. I didn't watch it live. Where was I? I was out for a meal. And so yeah, I just watched. I caught it. I caught up with it. Yeah.
Any thoughts? Because as horrible as it is to say, I too was out and away, and I've got no appetite to go back and watch any of it.
Well, the Akeem Ennis-Brown fight was once again an advert for All That's Wrong in Boxing. Maxwell wins, but he didn't win. But It's what happens,
But
right?
no one's going to care. Nothing will get done about it. Move on.
Just what's wrong with boxing, isn't it? Another thing again. Once again, the same thing. Maxwell did not win that fight. He lost by a mile. Akeem Ennis-Brown is a defensive fighter. He's not the promoter's fighter. He's not crowd pleasing. They want to really get rid of him. He loses. I mean, it happened. Do you remember there was a cruiserweight fight with the kid from up north? He was terrible. Was he a Cole Greaves fighter? But he was so defensive many years ago, and he thought Liam I can't remember who he fought, but they just had to get him beat because he was not entertaining enough for boxing. So unfortunately, it's the sport we're in. But there was no way he won that fight. No way in a million years. I watched it. Just ludicrous scoring. But it's what happened.
Yeah.
That's what you got to remember. When you got betting odds and Sam Maxwell was 5-4 against, Sam Maxwell said last week that was the bet, one of the bets I thought there was two bets I thought were worthwhile. But Sam Maxwell 5-4 was the bet because he's got the experience, but he's also the promoter's fighter, and they can't afford Akeem Ennis-Brown to keep winning. So the judge, that's just what happens. I'm not saying anything's crooked or anything like that, but it's just how it goes.
Yep. The fights this weekend, Josh Warrington. You always go by the premise of rematches go the same way as the originals.
More often than not, rematches. It doesn't happen all the time. It's just the percentages. Is that I mean, you can go back to Lennox Lewis. He always got he always got his revenge. And but the law of, if you go back on the law of averages, you shouldn't have an immediate rematch with the same opponent. The odds of winning increase if you have a fight in between. And I think if we go back to Lennox Lewis without looking at it, I think he took fights in between, at least on one of the losses he had. But normally, if you go back to back, you don't normally win if you go back to back. And the percentage of winning is thing. And I think you need to rebuild and go back. I always say to my fighters, don't have an immediate rematch after you lose. Go if you want to fight them again, or have one fight in between. It increases your chance of winning, and that's just statistical. Same thing with Warrington. I mean, listen, is he the most likely winner? Probably, but his chances of winning are diminished.
Yeah.
But again, we've got something. You've got 3 judges to help him, right?
If he survives the 12 rounds to get there.
But you've got 3 judges to help him.
Very true. And the Headingley crowd as well.
The 3 judges. The crowd may help him.
It's a decent card on Saturday.
No,
right?
it really is. No, it is good. And you've got to say that that Eddie Hearn has put a good card together here. You can't. I'm just going to pull up the whole card when I talk to you, but he's had some bad cards lately. But this is a decent card.
Katie Taylor, Jennifer Han, Ben Granados.
I'm going to say something. Katie Taylor does not beat Serrano.
Do you not think so?
No, I don't. I think Katie Taylor, I'm going to say this, I think she's sliding badly, but she's getting all the help that she can, she's getting all the help from the 3 judges. She's a great advocate for our sport, but she's sliding. She's definitely not the fighter she was. And I think she gets beat by Serrano. I think she gets beat by Chantel, Chantel Cameron. So I think she gets beat by Chantel Cameron. I think the idea of what Eddie did with Chantel Cameron was to keep her away from Katie Taylor. I think she's, what goes on. Look at the thing with Conor Benn this week, asking, Cole Greaves come out and said, can Avanesian vacate? I'll get him a good fight. Let's get Conor Benn in so he can fight a numpty. I mean, This is what you're dealing with. There's so much goes on behind the scenes in boxing that it's about that. But it's a good fight. Straffon Hughes, I like that fight. The Conor Benn fight, he wins that. I mean, there's no problem. It's a good little card, and the top of the bill is good. Warrington's gone straight back in. But I think, again, I haven't looked at the odds of the fight. Once again, if you back every person in a rematch who won the previous fight over 25 years of betting, you will be showing a profit.
Yeah. I look forward to seeing, I don't know whether Warrington was flat because of the lack of crowds or whether some of those hard fights, the Frampton fight, even the Galahad one, it wasn't pretty, but it was still tough. Have they taken it out of Warrington? Is he now on the decline and that's permanent? Or was it just a one-off poor night? We'll find out.
But the thing is, if he doesn't stop Lara, if Lara doesn't stop him,
yeah,
I predict Warrington wins on points, irrelevant to what happens during the 12 rounds.
Agree. What we got? Oliver McManus, what's the worst boxing venue you and Martin have attended or promoted an event at? And you can't pick the Indigo at O2. Well, the Indigo at O2 wins every time, hands down. It's a garbage venue, and there's a reason no one uses it.
Shocking. I mean, that's the worst venue.
Yeah, but if we're not allowed that, worst.
Well, the worst I've promoted in would probably be Tottenham.
Yeah, that leisure centre was crap, wasn't it? Let's be honest. I think, as stupid as any stadium is the worst for me, because unless you're sat ringside, you might as well be at home.
Yeah, that's fair. I wouldn't go to a stadium. I personally wouldn't go to a stadium fight. Never.
Yeah. The big arena ones are okay, O2, Madison Square Garden, you get a decent view pretty much wherever you are, but a stadium isn't the same.
I think that's a fair thing to say. Any stadium is poor, but there's plenty of small hall venues that aren't very good. I mean, I see they're doing a professional show at the Circus Tavern. I don't think that's going to be a particularly good venue. We've done one in a nightclub in Portsmouth, wasn't the greatest venue. I think sometimes at small hall, though, you have to use venues that aren't really that great. They're not ideal. Yeah, you're working with a limited budget. You're working within, and I personally, if you don't have your call in London, you've got to go to some of these other venues. I think I'm past wanting to promote in some of these, but your call to me is a great venue for boxing. I know it's not the ideal from dressing rooms and everything like that, but for boxing, it's a great venue. And to me, that's part of when I came into boxing we've had more shows at York Hall than any other promoter. And and that to me is the best venue to watch boxing, but it's being ruined.
I've realised we've got loads of questions, so I'm going to fire through these a little bit.
Okay.
I didn't realise quite how many we had until I scrolled through. Bettel Q on Twitter. Are plans afoot for Ring Talk to return to the old studio format? Maybe not. It's quite easy doing it over Zoom. Time saving.
Better like this for all of us. It's not as if we're making money from doing this. So I think in reality we'll keep it like this, because does it really matter if we're sitting in the same room? It doesn't. We're going to say the same things, aren't we?
Yeah. Arteta, should he stay or should he go now?
He should go now.
Now, I like the fact to use the word now. Now, keep him. He's doing an amazing job. Trust the process. What a man.
But let's talk about what I said the other day. Bet of the season, bet of the year is Arsenal at 1-2 to finish in the top half of the table. I just went down William Hill's to try and put the bet on this morning, but I'm having some troubles with it. But I'm going to be getting that, because that is an outstanding bet. They have total overreaction. The players are good enough to be in the top 10. And if Arteta is still doing absolute shite, which is possible, it's only a matter of time. If he goes before Christmas, Arsenal still finish in the top 10. So it's the bet of the year. So anybody wants to bet 1-2 Arsenal, top 10, whoever you support, that is probably one of the best value bets I've seen in a long, long time.
Yeah, that's what I said to you the other day. I might be a Tottenham fan, but there aren't 10 worse teams than Arsenal in the Premier League.
No.
There aren't. Better Q on Twitter. Any plans for any Welsh shows in 2022? Ooh.
We're struggling to do London shows at the moment.
Yeah. British heavyweight boxing. Darren Baker, Harry Armstrong. What are their stories and how far do you think they can climb?
Harry Armstrong had a good amateur records with Don Charles. He's definitely got ability, and he will go. It's very hard to say when they're novices, right? How far can they go? But he's got the ability to go a decent level. I don't want to make silly claims because that's not what I do. But I think he definitely wins titles.
Yeah,
definitely wins titles.
Darren Baker.
He's more novice-y, Darren, and he's going to take a bit of time. I need to see him. I haven't seen him live fighting, so it'd be hard to see. Again, heavyweight, it's about you can manage heavyweight. We had David Abraham at 7-0 before he quit. We can manage our heavyweights to get them in very good positions. What often, I mean, you look at what I did with Lewis, and if he had trained, we'd have been in a great position. Dave Abraham was really managed really well to the level, and then he did decide that was enough for him. We had Pilata undefeated before he left us. So, you can develop a heavyweight really well. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Darren's got, and then hopefully he gets to fight, which is obviously the big problem that you've got out there at the moment. But yeah, they both got potential, but we'll be able to see and watch their careers develop. Other than that, I don't want to make silly predictions, but I think Harry Armstrong has got the better amateur pedigree.
Right, I'm going to throw a question at you, and I've got to quickly nip out the room for 2 seconds, and
Okay.
I'll be back. So there's one that you can talk through, and then I'll be back.
Okay.
Ross Newton 1 on Twitter. As a manager, how easy or difficult would it be to manoeuvre an away corner fighter to be a contender for an area level or English title? Thinking about this after seeing Brett Fido speaking about his aspirations after 2 decent wins on the road. Great question. I'm going to throw it to you, and I'm going to disappear for 2 seconds.
Okay. So, difficult but not impossible. We had a fighter called Lawrence Bennett, who we got up to English title level. He was an away fighter, and he won at York Hall. He beat, I've forgotten the name of the guy he beat now. Anyway, he won at York Hall on a Mark Burford show against the home fighter. And then we got him a fight with Matty Askin for the English title, by which time we was able to turn a home fighter into a ticket seller because he sold really well for the Matty Askin fight. As it happened in that fight, he put Matty Askin down in the first round. It wasn't ruled a knockdown, and they both fell out of the ring, and it was declared a technical draw. Now, Lawrence was capable, probably, I think, of winning a British title, but unfortunately, he had an injury that was found in a scan, and he was never allowed to box again. So it can happen. And I've got several journeymen at the moment who want to try and rejuvenate their careers. And it really is possible. Dalton Miller, for example, was a journeyman. He's only a fight away, perhaps, from a Southern area shot. So that we've turned him around. And there are other fighters out there that want to try and have a go. So, but it isn't easy. It isn't easy. It requires very skilled management and very clever manoeuvring, but it is difficult, and not many people out there have got a track record of doing it. But it is possible, but it's not easy. That's the summary of it.
There you go. I'm back for the summary. Sorry, the downside of doing it at home rather than a one-on-one studio is you get called downstairs. Right. Sam O'Reilly, who is the most lucrative boxer in the world, and why is it Jake Paul?
Because the man's super smart, intelligent, gets a business. You've got to admire what he's done. He's super smart. Like, Ebony Bridges, same thing. They're showing people what you need to do. And
how many boxers talk about the sport as it's a business, but don't treat it as a business?
Yeah. And I'm afraid they are showing you what you should do. It's not the best fighters nowadays. The TV companies are looking for something else. It's totally different. You can't just turn them. We've had this conversation for years, right? And discussed it for years. But I'm afraid they're showing the boxers what you have to do. And I'm afraid it isn't good enough to sell 50 tickets and say I'm super skilled, I've got all the styles, I've got all this, I've got all that, I'm going to be the world champion. You're not going to be a world champion because you're not going to get the opportunities to be a world champion unless you have something different.
And also, it depends what your aspirations are out of the sport, whether it's the integrity side of it to become a world champion or the financial side of it to become rich. One thing people should have picked up on that I'm amazed more and more don't. Jake Paul doesn't care about being a world champion. Ebony Bridges, I don't think she's particularly asked about being a world champion. It's not that important.
They want to make money. They want to
There are
make
so
money.
many world champions around anyway. What difference does it make? How are you going to stand out as a world champion? You stand out as something else.
Totally agree. They're there to make money. That's smart people. They get what you should do for marketing, and you've got to look at them as the blueprint of how you actually do things. That's just how it is. It's just how it is.
Along a similar theme, ex-fighter Raheem Noble, now doing his own thing, out interviewing people, does a phenomenal job. Shout out to Raheem because I love him. Would Steve consider having UK Instagrammers and TikTokers fight on his cards to boost the shows and create bigger crowds? They're putting bums on seats and broadcast platforms are taking an interest.
Well, the problem over in the UK, the board wouldn't allow it. They'll block it.
Yeah, so you can't have a white collar / professional show in one go. You could run 2 shows in a day, but you couldn't run them as one.
Let me tell you something. If Bieber was run better and was run properly, they would be a proper rival now to the Boxing Board of Control.
Would you? I don't even know if I'm allowed to ask this, but we'll find out. Would you ever consider setting up a separate, board? So, as you say, Bieber, who are, whatever. I won't say anything because I'll end up being threatened by legal action that will never happen, like everyone else does. But were they reaching the potential that they potentially could? They could be a proper legitimate rival. Would you ever consider becoming a separate governing body?
No, because I'm 59 years of age and I have other aspirations in life that far exceed that. But the board are leaving themselves open to that happening.
Would you ever join Bieber?
No.
No.
I'm no, to me, if you can't do it the way I'm not 30, if I was 35, right, or 30, and I had this real big passion for doing it, then you might have a thing. But I'm 59. I'm a financial advisor. I do boxing because of a passion for it, and that's why I've done it. And once the passion is removed or forced out of you, then to me that's the end. There is no halfway house. I have no interest in trying to do anything like that. So, I mean, somebody actually rang me and asked me about doing it because they said you'd be the best person to front it. Would you like to do it? Somebody in boxing, quite high up, and I said no, I'm not interested. Absolutely not interested. The board itself running a board of control is a tough job. I think it's a really hard thing to do, and they have a really hard job. And I've always been an advocate of what they try to do. Because I think it's very difficult what they do, but there are certain things at the moment that I find very difficult to understand. Let's just leave it like that.
All right, our friend Costello King is back on Twitter.
Good man, I like him.
Evening, Steve.
What's my regret this week?
I love it. I love it. Any regrets over the Conor Vian debacle with Afghanistan disrupting your plans for the first main event of your return? Why did you start a war in Afghanistan 20 odd years ago, Steve, that eventually ended with Conor Vian having to go over and help
it's all
out?
My fault. I regret it. I regret starting the war. I regret everything. But no, seriously, I mean, it didn't disrupt anything because thank God everybody's not lost out of that because Billy Allington's got a shot. Conor still gets his shot. So we've made sure that nobody's at a disadvantage out of that. Again, we tried.
And Conor got home safely, and that's what, ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, I have my regrets are over the way that the politicians have dealt with people and stuff like that. I have a lot of regrets over governments and politicians because I think most of them are just a bunch of scumbags and they're self-serving. They do it for their own financial gain and they don't care about people. That's my view about politicians. And so I've got a lot of regrets about that. I think that's been a really sad thing. And but there we go. That's a different thing entirely. But no, fortunately, we saved. Jamani's still got a fight. Conor still gets his fight. So we've done the right thing. Providing we run the 11th of September show, which we are planning to do that. And whatever we're going to run with what we're obligated to. But I'd say if we get too much hassle from people where it's not our fault, then at the end of the day, it's every boxer that's training. Because remember, these shows were originally set up. We set these shows up provisionally back in June, right? Because boxers have to get training 3 months before, sell tickets. So these shows were set up when it was a 9-fight. There were 9-fight cards, and we knew they were going to 10. We didn't know when we set these cards up that we'd get this 7-fight limitation. We didn't know.
Yeah.
And at what point do you tell boxers, and you say boxers, it could be cut, but they're hoping to, it's just very difficult for everybody, and it just makes the whole thing unpleasant. It's an unpleasant situation that we're all in at the moment. So.
Yep. Right, Tim, official Dermo on Twitter. 2 questions. Thoughts on any potential reasons for Kadami versus Ahmed being off TV on Saturday? I didn't know it was off TV. I've only watched the highlight. I've watched the full highlight. I have no idea why that fight wasn't on it. Makes no sense, because that was going to be a cracking fight. It was a cracking fight. So I have no idea. We're not involved in the scheduling or the, what's going on down there. But, yep. Nathan Heaney, good or bad for shows in the context of Stokes songs being sung throughout while other fighters are on and his fans leaving in droves before the main event?
Money.
Yeah, I mean, I don't...
1,500 tickets, let's say, sold them, an average of, say, 75, means he's generated £100,000 for the show. I do not know what his contract is, but let's say Nathan's on, including commission,
20
at a maximum, right? So let's say he's on 20, and the opponent was a typical journeyman we've used. The opponent costs 24 grand. Promoter, allowing for VAT to come off that, has made about 55, 60 grand on the fight.
Yeah. Yeah. It
doesn't really matter what we think about the spectacle of it. It's done for financial reasons.
Yeah. I don't know if it's bad for the show or not. I mean, ultimately, if he didn't sell them, would they just be empty seats anyway?
Perhaps.
Don't know.
Perhaps. But yeah, but the whole I get the point where all his fans are doing is singing about Nathan when other fights are going on. But then, as you say, there probably would be it'd be an empty arena. So I think anybody that puts bums on seats, like Nathan, and apparently he's a really nice kid, it's got to be good for boxing. But the promoters definitely look at him as a cash cow, right? They're not, and that's why they pulled what they pulled out of the fight with River Wilson Bent for the English title, right? Because why? Because probably River Wilson Bent wins that fight, and they don't want to disturb their financial gain. So it's just the boxing business. It's how boxing is. I'm afraid that you can't look at it with a purist view. It's run as a business, and fighters are used for whatever they bring to the table. It's just how it is.
Yep. Final question, and I'm going to bundle the two together. And as we're on the talk of business, one from Tim Brown, one from British Boxing Blog. They're along the same lines. The Zone, $7.99 per month. It's been announced. It's going up to today. Is that too much? No. So I suppose putting it into I put this out as a vote on Twitter. So if you look at it in the context of it was $1.99, it's now $7.99.
Yeah.
It's a 400% increase.
Yeah.
What are you getting for that 400%? Now,
no, you can't look at it like that, though.
I can.
Because $1.99 was just a total false price. It's like saying, I'll put tickets on sale at Tottenham next week and they'll be £2 each, and then I'll put them up to £40 each. What do I get for it? Well, you're getting the same thing you would have got, but it was just too cheap in the first place to try and lure you into buying the seats.
Which is fine, but then to me, it should be an incremental stepped rise, not $1.99 to $7.99. I would have thought you'd go $1.99, $4.99, $7.99 in that same time period, because they're talking about it happening by November.
I don't have a problem with the way I look at it is, when I look at Jake Paul against his thing, $14.95, is that worth pay-per-view? No, it's ridiculous. $7.99 for a month of the zone with what they've got on their roster, to me is perfectly fair. In my opinion, it's perfectly fair value. I don't think that's expensive. Box Nation used to be 10 quid, right? Fight Zone is £4.99, right? Now, Line Fight Zone at $4.99. By the way, I subscribe to Fight Zone because I try and give money to boxing, right? So $4.99 for Fight Zone, $7.99 for DAZN. There is absolutely no comparison in the value, and that's the best way you can compare the two. There's no comparison in the value. I don't think $7.99 for DAZN is a bad deal at all. I mean, it's fine. The fact that $7.99 is a bonus. That's why I look at it. You look at it differently. So
I think it's too much. I genuinely do. In that, for boxing only, don't get me wrong. It's £8 a month. You spend £8 a month on, a couple of pints or a takeaway. That's always going to be the argument. But ultimately, what's the value out of it? When the two shows that are lined up, and I appreciate there will be more that comes, but the two shows that are lined up are the Leeds one and Liam Smith, Anthony Fowler.
Yeah.
Now, there's also the argument you get the international content, but a lot of the US content's kind of disappeared. And frankly, I don't care about the Italian and the Spanish cards unless there happen to be some UK interest. It has to be someone that I've got a real interest in, not just, I don't know, Robbie Davis Jr. I'd pick his name out of a hat. He's going over to fight some Spaniard I've never heard of. That doesn't do anything for me. So it has to be anchored around the UK side of things. Now, what I'd really love to see is something else coming onto DAZN. I don't know what that is. It might be too far-fetched to be Premier League rights, but there's been so many rumours of buying out BT and their contracts. So that's where I think we'll start to see some kind of shift, is that it has to move away from just being boxing at some point.
I think that's fair. But I think for Boxing Channel, when Box Nation was a tenner, and that was years ago, and Fight Zone is £5, I don't think £8's a bad price point. I genuinely don't. I think it's all right. I've got no issue with it. No issue.
I did a poll on Twitter, and granted, it's it's a Twitter poll. It's not science. 333 votes. 48% said it's too much, I'm cancelling. 45% said I'd pay it and review in December, and 7% said bargain.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. I think it's fair. And to some people, you see, some people want, it's a real big issue because some people want something, they think they're going to get something for nothing. People think, for example, a lot of boxing fans, if you do a poll, would think that we should stream our shows for free so they could watch it at home for free, right? And they would vote for that. But that's bollocks, right? Because that just makes no financial sense for us. But yet they would say, oh, that's what we should be doing because they want to watch content. So a lot of the people just don't want to pay extra money. I don't think it's a fortune of money. I think it does depend on what content comes through, but DAZN are really looking to expand. So I'm hoping that it becomes quite a worthwhile thing. I don't think it's a bad price point, and I wouldn't keep changing the points. I would have an issue if they go put $7.99 now and then in December go $10.99 or $11.99. I'd start to have an issue with that. I think if this is a genuine price point and they're going to try and add stuff to it, I think it's okay. But I totally agree with you about the foreign stuff. The foreign stuff's shite.
Yeah. I think the other risk is that boxing fans are, as a whole, we're quite adept at streaming stuff. Mm-hmm. And so at $1.99, it's not worth my effort finding the correct, I have ways of doing it fairly quickly. But at $7.99, I might start debating that in terms of I could get the same content elsewhere for free. Now, I'm not saying that I expect them to keep it at $1.99, but I would expect the standard and or the volume to go up to justify.
How do you justify Fight Zone at $4.99 then?
I couldn't. I'm not. It's not for me to do that, and I couldn't justify. I don't subscribe to it because there's not enough on there that I care about for $4.99 per month. That doesn't make sense to me as a product.
Yeah, but I think that's a fair. Listen, it's like anything else. Though people vote with their feet, and
Yeah, exactly. It's what you deem it to be. Is it good value or not? And
yeah,
I'm not going ahead and cancelling mine. Not yet. I'm going to see it out until the end of the year and see what else happens in the landscape of DAZN, because I want it to succeed, because it's a platform that carries sport, and I love sport. So cool. Let's see where it goes.
Exactly that. No, exactly that. No, that's perfect. Oh well, we will see. We will see. Plenty to talk about next week. We'll have the card finalised by the time we do next week for the 11th. We'll know who's fighting who, but it's really difficult at the moment you can't match certain people because you don't know if they're going to be fighting or not.
Our show may go one of two ways next week.
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly.
Right. Take care, everyone. Have a good week. Thank you for watching.